Hi, my name is Moray. Welcome to Moray's Muse, an anti-AI generated history channel. Today we're talking about Lucius Quinctius Cincinnatus. This Roman statesman is not very famous in Europe, but he is very famous in the United States. Cincinnati is named after him, and in this video we'll be exploring his biography, but we'll also be asking, why were America's founding fathers so obsessed with Rome? So we'll be delving into the biography of Cincinnatus, and we'll also be delving into why a lot of America's original model is based on Rome. Okay, let's get into it. Let's talk about the biography. Lucius Quinctius Cincinnatus, he was born on 519 BCE. He was a Roman patrician, statesman, and military leader. And his life, as recounted in Roman history by Livy, it made him an enduring symbol of civic virtue. He is most famous for his story as a farmer who was twice called upon the Roman Republic to serve as dictator. And in these times of crisis where he was called, he relinquished his power. He returned to his farm once the crisis were over. We know about this because of Livy. Let's talk about the traditional account from Livy. Cincinnatus, a respected patrician who'd retired from Roman life and just wanted a life on the farm. And he's living on a small farm across from the Tiber River, a very simple existence. In 458 BCE, the Roman army was surrounded by a rival tribe. The Senate, in a moment of dire need, needed their former patrician, Cincinnatus, living his peaceful, soft boy life on his farm, to come and handle this crisis. They find him on his farm and he's told to put on his senatorial toga and come and, well, save the Republic at the time. Within 16 days, Cincinnatus had defeated the Achaea, the rival tribe. This was in the Battle of Mount Algidus. And he rescued the Roman army who were trapped, and he celebrated a triumph in Rome. And he resumed duties and went back to his farm after he saved the Roman army. Despite being able to have his dictatorship for 6 months, he was like, no, going back home. And because of this story recounted throughout history and recounted by Livy, the story of Cincinnatus, it's a story about civic virtue, a man who does what's best for his country. The good of the state were more important than power was to him. And he is one of the cornerstones of Roman law because of this. The farmer who could have become a dictator was a very important story to the founding fathers of the United States. Because not only did he have military prowess, but he had political restraint. It's a huge contrast to stories that we hear every day as somebody who studies history. People like Sulla and Caesar and Catiline. Cincinnatus is a role model. The American founding fathers saw the Roman Republic as a prototype for what they wanted to recreate. There was a period during American history where democracy, aristocracy, and monarchy were kind of, the idea of Cincinnatus was a farmer who did his bit and then went back home and still had morals, was the ideal of the Americans because he was a totally free person. The Americans saw the Roman Empire as a cautionary tale. I don't think Trump is seeing the Roman Empire as a cautionary tale. The Americans saw the Roman Empire as being greedy and corrupt, which it was. It was a, we have wonderful leaders such as Tiberius and Nero from the empire. And while the Republic had figures like Cicero and Cincinnatus, who were quite morally well, the American founding fathers used the cautionary tale of the Roman Empire to warn against the dangers of tyrants. George Washington was seen as a modern-day Cincinnatus. In fact, George Washington welcomed this comparison. When you want to become very relevant, then you model yourself after somebody else. After leading the Continental Army to victory during the Revolutionary War, George Washington faced a pivotal choice. The future of a new republic hung in the balance, and many feared that a successful military general would call himself a monarch. On December the 23rd, 1783, George Washington performed a very potent act of political theatre. He appeared before the Continental Congress in Annapolis in Maryland, formally resigned his military commission. So he did like what Cincinnatus did. He did the moral thing. So he showed he would not be a dictator. He would not create an American monarchy. And in later years, he also did it again because he stepped down from the presidency after 2 terms, ensuring that this powerful new nation would not be governed by monarchs. Washington, like Cincinnatus, he prioritized personal virtue over public power. In May 1783, officers of the Continental Army, including George Washington and Henry Knox, founded the Society of the Cincinnati. This organization took its name from Cincinnatus to perpetuate the memory of the War for Independence and to promote the values of the citizen soldier who serves the Republic and then returns to private life. Its founding document, the Institution, aimed to preserve the revolutionary ideals. And the society had its critics, obviously. Opponents said that its hereditary nature actually did create an American aristocracy. Like, it was a thinly veiled American aristocracy. And actually a betrayal of the revolutionary principles it claimed it held. However, the society's name left a mark on American history and society. And Roman ideals were huge in America. The founders, who were deeply versed in classical literature, saw Roman history as a source for political theory and rhetoric, and even public identity. American political leaders used Roman rhetoric and Roman figures to validate their messages and give them historical weight, because America doesn't have that much history, you know. Well, they do, but they genocided it. So, for example, fun fact, actually, didn't know this, Alexander Hamilton, he wrote a series of essays against the Whiskey Rebellion, and his nickname that he gave himself, the pen name, was Tully, actually. And do you know what that nickname is based after? Marcus Tullius Cicero. And you know, Cicero was really loved by the American patriots. Oh God, that term, right, has been used so much under Trump, you know what I mean? Like with Alex Jones, you know what I mean? Patriots and stuff like that. It's kind of disgusting that Cicero has links to this. Cicero is a very based man, but he has incredible stories in history, so Alex Jones using the term patriot, so Cicero could be linked with patriotism. Ugh. Samuel Adams signed an essay with Cicero's motto, for example, Sedat arma togae, let arms yield to the toga. The most common pseudonym in America at the time was Publius. Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay for the Federalist Papers chose this name to honor Publicola, a hero instrumental in founding the Roman Republic, hoping the same way to be true for the American Republic. I mean, I wonder what they would think of Trump, who's threatening to serve a 3rd term. Was not threatening, really, he's gonna do it. Washington loved Cato the Younger. Cato the Younger, the writer, was really inspiring to him. There was a harsh winter at Valley Forge, and there was a ban on theatrical productions. So Washington, to inspire his troops, arranged for Joseph Addison's play, Cato, to be held. This play, which depicts the conflict between virtuous citizenship and the threat of greed and empire, resonated deeply with the soldiers. It was kind of like propaganda, to be honest with you. Like, let's be honest. The founders also employed anti-models, so they could illustrate what they feared happening. Figures like Julius Caesar were seen as villains, and they would compare him to King George III. And obviously, neoclassicism took its hold in the architectural style of the United States. We can see so many Roman architectural elements throughout the United States, especially the US Capitol Dome, for example, and all throughout Washington, D.C. There's a Roman triumphal arch at Union Station. Even the eagle as the symbol goes back to ancient Rome. They really mimicked the way of the late days of the Roman Republic. It really wanted to demonstrate a learned status on the Eurocentric global stage, which was huge back in the day. Now we see places like China governing pretty much the world stage, but the Europe on the global stage back in the day was huge. Colonial America placed a great emphasis on classical education. From the 17th century, Greek and Latin were mainstays of the education system, for wealthy people, obviously. The Library of Congress notes, from the 17th to the 18th century, classical languages were one of the most important elements of education. For example, the Boston Latin School, which was founded in 1635, and it was to teach Latin and Greek, which we know were the key languages. Greek was a language liked by philosophers. For the Americans, they really wanted to use Rome as a base because otherwise it would be the British that they'd have to base everything on, and the British had a monarchy, and back in the day especially, a really bad class system. Rome really wanted civic duty and citizen soldiers, and they didn't want the despots they assumed with the later Roman Empire. So, you know, Caesar and then Augustus and then Nero, you know what I mean? The beginning stages of the Roman Empire. They really wanted the Cincinnatus end, you know, the kind of Gracchi brothers vibes, you know, about land for soldiers. They wanted to avoid any kind of hijinks with dictators, which they've done so well with that, haven't they? Yeah. We obviously as well, while we're at it, have to talk about enslaved people in the States and the contrast to the Roman Republic, which also had enslaved people. Americans using the Roman Republic as a template justified their history of keeping enslaved people. It was a very normal practice for slave owners to give enslaved people classical names, right? It was a thing. Records from the period list names such as Cato, Pompey, Africanus, Hercules and Hannibal for men, and Venus, Phyllis and Juno for women. And historians offer a few different definitions of why this happened. Slave owners wanted to show off their classical education, as classical education was huge during the neoclassical and Enlightenment period. And it was very performative to show how intellectual they were. If the Romans did it, then they could too. These names such as Pompey and Africanus and Hannibal were huge game changers during the Republic. They gave to enslaved people who had no power to mock them. And names like Venus, calling enslaved women Venus, was a normalization of sexualized violence. The use of these classical names was a tool to dehumanize enslaved people even more. The founding fathers of America weaponized the knowledge of the Roman Republic for their ideals of what a nation should be, and justified the Roman Republic for a lot of the sick things that they did to other people. Many people who gained their freedom then obviously changed their name. America's infatuation with the Roman Republic is really, really complicated, and they chose some of the most grisly things from the Roman Republic to justify what they were doing in their newly colonized country. It is fascinating to talk about though, and I hope my American viewers, if we have any, yeah, put your hands up. Do not get offended. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like, dislike if you don't.